So we left for the Dominican Republic maybe 2 or 3 days ago, and the first thing that went wrong was 5 days ago, my bad. The first thing that went wrong was the weather. We waited too long and the northerlies passed before we could make the best use of them. So we sort of had to punch into it for a few days, and everyone is really tired. We're going to do it that 70s style.
Then we stopped at a marina in Great Managua, which was actually really nice, which was a positive. Had a really nice stay in Great Managua, and we got to see a lighthouse.
Anything that
I went a positive.
You went positive.
Okay.
I went positive.
Alright, next.
So negative, these people.
Okay. So we left Great Managua, as Zach said, without the northerlies, and the seas were just huge. And first thing to go wrong on that sail would have been maybe the water tanks. Zach noticed tons of fresh water pouring out while we're on a heel, and he calmly comes upstairs where John and I are up at the helm and says, "John, could you just have a look at something for me?" So as not to alarm us and cause panic on board. That was the first of many problems.
After the water tank was leaking all through the boat, the furling line broke at night, and so I think Cal and I were off watch downstairs, and then we just hear all the flogging of the jib, and then we had to get up, and I think John got up and fixed up the furling line and was violently ill while doing so. But he was a champion and made it through, so yeah.
After the furling line broke, we started noticing that the middle hatch and the companionway hatch began to leak. And they were leaking quite bad and drifting into both the pilot berths on either side. So that was the first leaks to occur.
And so nobody's sleeping. I'm not in the pilot berth anymore, which is the most comfortable bed because there's leaks, and I'm sleeping in the V berth, which is right below the forward stay and the furler for the jib. And Zach's up on watch, and John's sleeping on the couch, and all I hear is this like, and then the whole jib is out, and you can hear it flopping around, and I'm like, there goes the furler again. So John's gone to the trouble, been so sick, redoing this furler, and threading it through, down through all the pulleys, winching it up, pulling out just a corner of the big jib again, and like, not an hour later, it would have been just gone again. So now we have too short of a furling line and no way to furl our massive jib in these heavy winds.
So after dealing with the furling line several times over, we decided to pull down the furling jib and go with the storm jib, just because we had a few more days in the passage, and instead of punching into it with the flogging jib, we'd get a bit better shape with the storm sill. So middle of the night, 3 waves, up the very bow, holding on for dear life while trying to take down a sail and put a new one up. We got through that, and so that was the end of the trouble with the jib.
After we managed to take the jib down and put up the storm jib, which Kelly and I wouldn't have been able to do without Zach, we went back downstairs and found even more leaks. The carpet was so solid wet, and it was just holding water. So we tried to put some towels in key areas, but we still had 2 days left, so we were well aware by that stage that it was just going to be a really wet journey. We had barely made any progress east, and we were starting to feel a little bit defeated by the end of the first night, start of the second morning.
I'm going to just backtrack a little to the storm jib because I think we forgot the other problem that came along with that. We went to, Zach tackled down the big jib. Well, it's only a 92%, but he tackled down the big jib, got ropes around it, got it inside, go to put up the storm jib, and the main halyard is wrapped around, I guess, the spreader and the radar. We'd been tightening it down, it wouldn't tighten. Luckily it didn't break the radar, but yeah, I mean, not only would we not, it would have been hard to learn how to do that in the dark, but we were glad to have a Sydney to Hobart racer who had to do that twice an hour, according to Zach. So got that up, got the spare jib halyard on, and have yet to untangle the main halyard as of this moment now.
Is there more leaks after that?
Then we started doing some pretty serious tacking up by the lower side of Turks and Caicos. And we thought maybe we're in a position where we can take one tack down to Liberon, fingers crossed. So second night we managed to hold one tack. I think that was probably the first time I got a decent sleep. I think it was probably the first time Zach got a decent sleep, and Callie was on watch for a long time. So I actually had a brilliant dream where we had arrived in Luberon and then got woken up to Callie, and it was quite apparent that we weren't in Luberon, and it was quite defeating, to say the least.
So the next problem, I guess, would have been on our arrival. Oh yeah, I forgot. So a few times we tried, because the tacking was so ridiculous, it was 155 miles as the crow flies from Great Anagua to Luberon, and we have to check the GPS, but we think we did about 400 miles worth of tacking because the winds were from exactly where we want to go. But a few times we'd tack close enough and we'll think, let's just motor directly at Luberon since we can't sail there. And we turned on the engine and it starts up and it revs up and it gets going, and then it just put, and you watch the RPMs just drop and engine dies. So we tried that a couple of times with no luck. It's the middle of the night, and yeah, we gave up on it for the time being and thought we would try again in Luberon or closer to if we got a little bit calmer water, because it wasn't the calmest when we were trying to motor.
So we had to change a fuel filter in the engine sometime through the night, and once we got that done, we were able to motor and point towards our heading a bit more. And then the next stressful part would have been entering the channel at night and navigating the channel. Narrowly missed a few channel markers, which was aided by John on the bow with a torch yelling and screaming. Very helpful down the back of the boat.
Once we bounced our way through the channel markers. No, we didn't actually hit any. Once we made our way through the channel markers and we got into Luberon, finding a mooring was hard. Boats everywhere and markers everywhere, but no moorings. So we had to drive all the way down to the southwestern section before we found a empty ball. And then we picked up the ball and tied off, and we thought that was it. We thought that was all.
And I think the phrase, like, what else could have gone wrong on that sail, that was so terrible, is what caught us out, because so we tied up to the mooring wall, John backed up on it, check and make sure that it's good enough. It was a pretty calm night, because the winds here don't really blow at night in the harbour. They pick up at 11 and blow all day and then stop for the night. And we woke up this morning and we were on a really, really terrible mooring ball that goes pretty much under the boat next to us once the winds start blowing, as we learned. And so we had Papo, the local marina guy who's in charge of some of the moorings. He came over and helped us move to a new mooring, and John had kicked the boat into gear and it went nowhere. So we tried reverse, we tried forward, we tried, you look out the back, you can't see any water moving, and sure enough, we got the GoPro in the water on the end of the boat hook, thank you, and there is no propeller on our shaft. So that's a new development.
So we think what happened was last night, at some point, the retaining nut that sits inside the propeller. What? The retaining bolt that sits inside the propeller that has split pins has somehow come off. When I was backing out on the mooring, we backed up and then it pulled us forward again. And I was like, oh, there must be a lot of chain on the mooring, because even though I was still in reverse, it managed to pull us back forwards. But I think what's actually happened is the proppers just decided to go whoop, off the back and fall down. So we think we might know where it is. We might try and organise someone to go and hopefully retrieve it, depending on the cost. We're also going to look at second-hand props. Yeah, so it's a bit of a concerning issue. We could have gone into neutral at any point last night, and a wave could have knocked the prop off the shaft, and then we would have been up the proverbial creek without a paddle. So we're pretty lucky, I think. At least we're anchored up and we're checked in. And now we get that buddy.